Mahina talaga internet pala. Mahina internet. Susunod naman. All right, class, let's settle down and get ready for today's lesson. We're going to be talking about something that's very familiar to all of us in this classroom. You have to be familiar with this concept, considering that you are future frontline educators or teachers. And the lesson or the concept that I'm referring to is about instructional materials. Allow me to share my screen for the presentation. Okay, everyone, I would like you to look at the screen. And if you would see, there are three pictures at the bottom part of this slide. Pictures of a vocabulary board, a teacher in a classroom, and a group of students learning outdoors. These are all examples of how we learn. Today, we're going to focus on the tools we use to learn. And these tools are what we call as instructional materials or IMs. Particularly, we'll be looking at conventional or traditional materials. These are the classic non-digital non-digital tools that have been used in teaching for a long time or since time immemorial. Think of them as the building blocks of learning. Things that help you understand new ideas, practice skills, and develop a positive attitude towards learning. They can be anything from a simple vocabulary on the board to a fun and interactive activity outdoors. It is important to remember that these materials are not just objects. They can also be people or even places, a guest speaker, a field trip to a museum, or even a simple walk around the school garden or around the campus can be a powerful learning experiences. The goal of any instructional material or IM is to make learning more effective and engaging for all learners. Now, let's Look at this picture of a teacher in front of her class. This brings up a very important point. While we all have these materials and tools, some say that the teacher is the best instructional material or the best IM. What do you think that means? It means that a good teacher can bring any topic to life. They can adapt their teaching styles, use their creativity, and connect with each of his or her learner to make learning meaningful, to make learning relevant. A textbook is just a book, but a teacher can turn that book into an exciting adventure. Think about this. A teacher can answer your questions in real time, offer encouragement when you're struggling, and create a positive and supportive learning environment. These are things that no book or worksheet or any task card can do on its own. So, while we'll be exploring the different types of materials or IMs in this lesson, remember the crucial role that your teachers play in the teaching and learning process, your teacher plays in your education. This slide shows students or learners learning outside of the traditional classroom setting. As we mentioned earlier, instructional materials are not limited to the four walls of our classroom. The world around us is a rich and vibrant source of knowledge. That's why I always say that the world's biggest classroom is life itself. A trip to a historical site can make history come alive in a way that a textbook never could. A visit to a science museum can spark your curiosity and inspire you to ask new questions. By taking our learning outside, we can connect with our community, experience things firsthand, and create lasting memories. This is the very purpose why in the university we integrate service learning programs so that you will be given the opportunity to apply what you have learned in the classroom while you serve communities or while you serve people outside the university or outside the school. It's good that you're exposed in our project teacher because your exposure, tutoring, and teaching pupils in the basic learners in the basic education schools serve as a training ground for you to advance your content expertise and even your pedagogical skills. And I'm certain that once you would become a professional teacher, the things that you have learned in the project teacher, in the SLP project teacher, will be demonstrated by you in the profession. Having said all this, we get our brains warmed up and let's do this quick. And we call this activity on the spot essay. I would like you to make use of the comment box in this recorded video uploaded in my YouTube account. And I want you to first write your own definition of instructional materials. Then I want you to provide a sentence of your explanation of your definition. And also, I also would like you to explain this concept or this statement: the teacher is the best instructional material. You make use of a sentence maybe to explain, okay, this statement. You don't have to worry about being perfect. Just write down your thoughts and ideas in the comment box because this is a great way for you to reflect on your own learning, your learning experiences, and for me to see what you already know about the topic. Now we continue. Let's move on. Look at these images of a nose, an eye, a hand, an ear, and a mouth. These icons, these images represent our five senses. Remember that effective instruction or instructional materials engage as many of your senses as much as possible. When you can see, hear, touch, and sometimes even smell and taste what you're learning, it creates a much deeper and more memorable experiences. This is because our brains are wired to learn through sensory input. The more senses we use, the more pathways we create in our brains that the new information are being remembered, or the more pathways we create in our brains for that new information to stick. This is why we do hands-on activities, watch videos, listen to stories, and even do fun experiments. It's all about making learning an active and multi-sensory experience. Now, having said all of this, it's very important that we have to understand fully the roles of instructional materials in the teaching and learning process. This slide outlines some of the key roles of IMs in teaching and learning, and let's go through them together. First, IMs promote meaningful communication and effective learning. They help to clarify concepts and make abstract ideas more concrete. Second, IMs ensure better retention. When you're actively engaged with the material, you're more likely to remember the content being discussed through the material. Third, IMs overcome classroom limitations. They can bring the outside world into the classroom, making the inaccessible accessible. Fourth, IMs provide common experiences. They give us a shared foundation of knowledge that we can build upon in future lessons. Fifth, IMs stimulate and motivate students or learners. Let's be honest, learning is more fun when it's interesting, enticing, and engaging. And lastly, IMs encourage participation. When you're able to manipulate materials and be hands-on, you're more likely to be an active participant in your own learning. I think this has to be always remembered that active participation refers to students' sustained motivation or engagement throughout the lesson. It's also very important that we have to consider the various factors in developing instructional materials. When we say factors, these are things that we need to consider when we prepare IMs and when we use IMs to teach the learning content. First, remember that we always have to understand clearly our goals, the goals of the subject, its objectives, and even the learning outcomes before we could be able to develop a storyboard and working outline as our basis in discussing the lesson. After doing the learning plan or the storyboard, we have to identify if there are existing institutional resources. But that will not stop there. We also have to look into, or we have to ensure also that the existing institutional resources or materials can actually be utilized by the teacher, meaning the teacher has to possess the ability or capability in using the said available materials in teaching the content. Third, the teacher also may research off-the-shelf materials that have been developed by others. If there are no existing institutional resources or materials, then the teacher may also consider using the materials that have been developed by others, by his or her colleagues, by other teachers. and to determine if these materials are appropriate to teaching the subject or the learning content. It's also good to explore the possibility of adopting concepts of other teachers without infringing on anyone's copy protected design. For example, there are available materials in the internet, in the slide sharing sites, where we can just download these PowerPoint presentations, okay? And we just have to recognize the one who prepared the presentation. But of course, it's just about using it. But if there's a need to modify these existing materials based on the learning outcomes, then we have to do it. We cannot just readily use what is readily available, but we have to make sure that the existing IMs are appropriate enough, okay, to meet the learning outcomes. If they are inappropriate, then there's a need to modify the existing material. If the instructional materials are effective, especially the things we develop, then we can share our own materials or our own IMs, okay, with other teachers. This is the essence of professional learning communities, that we share the things we develop to other teachers, because this is one way to help one another deal with the many tasks or many responsibilities of teachers. Next, the teacher can also make his or her materials available for other users. So these are the different factors that we need to consider in developing instructional materials. Now we proceed to the different or specific types of conventional materials. Has anyone ever made a diorama before? Or have you seen a diorama before used by your teachers, especially when you were in the basic education? A diorama is a 3D model that shows a scene from a story, a historical event, or a moment in nature. It's a fantastic way to get creative and show what you've learned in a hands-on way. You can use a shoebox, craft supplies, and your imagination to build a miniature world. Dioramas are great for everything from illustrating a scene from a book you've read to creating a model of an animal's habitat. The next type of conventional material is a nature table. This is a lovely example of a nature table, this picture. It's a special spot in the classroom where we can display natural objects that we find, like interesting leaves, cool rocks, or colorful flowers. It's a wonderful way to bring the outdoors in and observe the changing seasons. A nature table class is a living, breathing part of our classroom that can spark our curiosity about the natural world. For example, after you discuss about the different types of rocks, sedimentary, igneous, metamorphic, it might also be good if we ask our students to collect samples of these rocks and bring these rocks in the classroom, and we put all these rocks in one place at the corner of the room. This is an example of a nature table. Another type of conventional IMs are the writing boards, right? Or yeah, the writing board or a display board. The writing board is this is our good old chalkboard or whiteboard or green board. It's the most common visual aid in the classroom, and for good reason. It's versatile, easy to use, and allows for spontaneous explanations and diagrams, especially if you know how to draw. You just have to remember that we always have to keep the board neat and clean, use colors that are easy to see when we write on them, and give time for our students to copy down important information from what we have written on the writing board. Now, in using the writing board, there are few suggestions or some key principles that we need to observe. First, we have to keep the board clean. We use chalk or pens that contrast with the background of the board. And remember, the most common color of the chalkboard being used, okay? The most common color of the chalk being used to write on the board is white. Okay, that's for blackboard or green board, we make use of white chalk. For whiteboards, we usually make use of black pen, black erasable pen, no? Then the next one is to write from left to right and top to bottom. It's also good that we have to divide the board, the writing board, into segments. And each of these segments, we write in each of these segments from left to right and top to bottom. Because, you know, Filipinos read from left to right. And as much as possible, not too long sentence for the whole board. That's why the board must be segmented. Next, we have to underline headings and important or unfamiliar words for emphasis. This will also help our visual learners while they listen to lectures we deliver and to remember the concepts we put or write on the board. And of course, do not talk while facing the board. We make sure that while we write on the board, okay, we have to see and we have to face most of our students because that's to maintain the conversational atmosphere of the classroom. And of course, we allow sufficient time for our students to copy the information from the board. Because the writings we put in the board will be useless unless our students would write down the things they have learned from the writings on the board. Now we proceed to the other types of conventional materials, and we have this material called as a flip chart. A flip chart is like a giant notepad on a stand. No, it's a giant notepad on a stand. It's perfect for brainstorming ideas, taking notes during a class discussion, and for smaller group activities. This is not ideal for classes with many students. That's why if you only deal with few students in class, then better to make use of a flip chart. The next one is a zigzag board. The zigzag board, also called as a multi-board, is a series of boards that are hinged together, connected together, so they can be folded up and move around easily. These are great for presentations or for creating different learning stations around the classroom because it's movable. The board is movable. The next one is the wall display. This is any display that is put up on a wall to make it more interesting and informative. Our classroom walls are filled with examples of this. You try to visit the basic education classroom, you would see many wall displays being put, okay, in the rooms. The next one is a rope and pole display board. This is a clever type of display or a display board that can be used in rooms that don't have a lot of wall space. It consists of two poles as seen in this picture. It consists of two poles with a rope strung between them, and you can hang your work from the rope. It's actually a great way to showcase everyone's amazing work. If you would like to exhibit students' good works, good learning outputs, completed work and tasks, then a rope and pole display board will be helpful for this purpose. When we are creating visual aids or visual materials, there are a few things that we need to keep in mind to make them as effective as possible. Think of this as ingredients for a great visual. The first one is unity. When we say unity, each visual should focus on one main idea and have a clear headline. What do you mean by clear headline? When we say clear headline, the visual material must clearly present the big concepts, big themes, or big ideas of the lesson. Second is simplicity. The ideas and relationships should be simple and easy to remember. We have to simplify the concepts for easy understanding of our students. Next, the visual material should follow legibility. That is, the letters should be big enough for everyone in the room to read easily. Third, consistency. We have to use the same style of writing and art throughout. That's what we mean by consistency. And last is clarity. We should avoid using type that is too small or writing in all capital letters, as this can be hard to read. Our writings in the visual materials have to be very clear. They have to be consistent. They have to be legible. They have to be simple, and that they have to present only one idea for each visual material. Do not mix it up, because certainly students will be confused of which concept should they have to understand as they go through with the lesson. Now, there is what we call as, there's a term we call as improvisation. Improvisation. Sometimes we may not have the exact materials we need, and that's when we have to get creative and to improvise. Improvisation is all about using what we have to create what we need. Again, using what we have to create what we need. This is about being resourceful. As teachers, we have to exercise being resourceful, because there are times that we are out of the budget, we are short of the budget, and we can only make use of things that we could afford of using. Hence the term improvisation. For example, we could make our own whiteboard out of a piece of cardboard and some clear packing tape. Or we could recycle old posters or old calendars to create a flip chart. Improvisation is a great skill to have, especially for teachers like us. Not just in the classroom, of course, but in life. Well, in life, we usually do improvisation, especially if we are short of finances. No, if we are short of finances, then we can make use of alternatives. No, alternatives to meet, okay, what we would like to do, or to satisfy what we need. Now, the next conventional IM are what we call as graphic materials. The diagram present or lists the different graphic materials that teachers may use to support their teaching and learning. And we will be discussing each of these as we go through with the presentation. We have drawings and illustrations. We have charts classified into flow charts, classification, tabular, organizational, stream, or tree charts. We have diagrams like Venn diagram, cycle, radial, and even pyramid. We have graphs like line graphs, bar graphs, pie graphs, or circle graphs. And we have maps and globes, physical map, political map, spatial purpose map, or also called as thematic map. Now, we discuss each of these types of graphic materials. We start with drawings and illustration. Drawings and illustrations are non-photographic representations of reality that can be used to explain concepts, tell stories, or add visual interest to a lesson. Remember when you had your readings in Philippine history, you have these Philippine cartoons or caricatures. And these caricatures and cartoons are examples of drawings and illustrations, because those things show the conditions or the context of the Filipinos during the American times or American regime. That's a very clear example of drawings and illustration. The next one are flowcharts. Flowcharts show the sequence or steps in a process. So if you would like to discuss about a certain process or a flow of a procedure, then we make use of a flowchart. The next one is a classification chart. A classification chart shows how different things are categorized or classified. For example, this one, a lesson in math about real number. Real number is classified into two, the rational and the irrational, while rational number is classified into two, the non-integers and integers. And integers have three types: the natural counting numbers, zero, negative numbers. This is an example of the use of a categorization chart or a classification chart. We also have what we call as tabular charts. The tabular charts present data in columns and rows. It's like a table presenting usually data or numerical data are presented in columns. A tabular chart is a very good chart to use when you sum up information or you will sum up data or numbers. The next one is organizational chart. This shows the structure of an organization. It shows a chain of command in an organization, such as a company, a corporation, a government department, the university, for example, and the lines in the chart show the interrelationships of data. For example, this one, there is a marketing director, and under the marketing director are three senior managers, and under each of the senior managers are junior managers, and under the junior managers are employees. Similarly, in the School of Education, Criminology, Arts, and Psychology, your head of office is what you call as the academic dean. Then under the academic dean, we have the different department heads. Department heads for psych and sciences, department head for political sciences, social sciences, department head for Christian faith education, department head for physical education, department head for criminology. And under each of these department heads are the faculty and students. So that's an example of an organizational chart. We also have stream or tree charts, which show how things are related to each other in a hierarchy. And usually, a perfect example of a stream or tree chart is the Mercado Rizal family tree. You could also try this, okay, in your context. No, if you would like to know your ancestors from patrilineal descent to matrilineal descent, or whatever descent it is that you are going to plot in a stream or tree chart. So that's a stream or tree chart. We also have diagrams, and the first type of diagram is a Venn diagram. If you would like to compare and contrast two objects or two similar but differing concepts, then we can make use of a two-circle Venn diagram. If there are three concepts that you need to compare and contrast, then we can make use of a three-circle Venn diagram. For example, you would like to compare and contrast amalgamation and assimilation. Both are social processes. Amalgamation here, assimilation here. We define amalgamation, we provide a definition of assimilation, and we put here social process because these two concepts are called social processes. Another example of a Venn diagram, a three-circle Venn diagram. For example, you would like to, the overlapping area of the circle here, you have to put or you have to indicate what makes these concepts similar with one another. For example, concept A, concept B, concept C. You put, you define concept A, you define concept B, you define concept C. Then in the overlapping area between A and B, you have to provide a common. Now, what is common between these two concepts? What is common between A and B? What is common between B and C? What is common between C and A? Then at the center, you have to put what is common between what's common among A, B, and C. That's how to make use of a Venn diagram. The next one is a cycle diagram. It shows a process with a continuous cycle. Okay, if the process is cyclical, or if the process is continuous, then we make use of a cycle diagram. For example, water cycle. Okay, what else? Water cycle. We also have recycling, maybe recycling process. Okay, that's a cycle. We can make use of a cycle diagram. Next is a radial diagram. It shows the relationship of a core element. So meaning to say there's a central concept here, and you put in the outside circles, you put any concept that is related with the central concept. That is an example of a radial diagram. Next, we have a pyramid diagram, shows foundation-based relationship. An example of this is Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which make use of a pyramid diagram, whether it's inverted or it's the original pyramid diagram. Then we also have graphs that we can use as conventional IM. These are used frequently in plotting relationships between changes in a set of data, usually over a period of time. In this example, this is a line graph about produce sales. Okay, if you would see, it shows how produce or how sales of produce are increasing and increasing over time. Okay, from October to June, and based on this line graph, it's on the month of June that there are better sales. No. Next are bar graphs. These consist of bars, either horizontal or vertical, horizontally or vertically, which are useful in presenting comparison of data. For example, this one, you have to determine the birth month of the students, and a bar graph was used. So if you would see, okay, most of the students' birth month are most of the students, okay, most of the students have their birthday on June. Okay, based on this bar graph. The next one is a circle or pie graph. A circle or pie graph is used to show how a whole is divided into parts and the relationship of the parts. Example of this is this one, when a teacher asks his students of their favorite, asks his or her students of their favorite type of movie. Most of the students mention about 30% of the students mention about romantic films, romantic movies. 25% mention about action movies, and others. Okay, so that's an example of a circle or pie graph. When you're going to budget, no, when you're going to report about how you spend 1,000 pesos, then you can make use of a pie graph also to 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 visually explain the share or how did you spend the 1,000 peso in a week. Now we proceed to maps and globes. We have physical maps, okay, emphasize terrain topographical concepts. This is what we call physical map, no? If you would see in this world map, okay, you would see that those lands in green are actually areas with forests, while areas in brown and in combination of brown and white, these are areas with deserts or with ice. So a tundra or a desert. This is an example of a physical map. We also have a political map. A political map emphasizes man-made phenomena such as state, city, or provincial boundaries or location of highways or railroads or government buildings. This one is a political map because it shows the different states in USA and the different capitals, the capital of each of the states. This is an example of a political map. There's also what we call a spatial or purpose map. These are maps used for peculiar purposes like those presenting amount of rainfall, for example, rainfall distribution, for example, population distribution, and travel routes. Like you would see, this one is the annual mean daily average temperature of the US states. So this is an example of thematic map. If there is a single theme, okay, that's being presented by the map, then we call it spatial purpose map or thematic map. Now, we do this a simple quiz to remind you, no, or to assess or to check your understanding of this recorded discussion. We'll try to identify which graphic material is being used, okay, in this classroom scenarios or classroom situation. The first one is teacher Alan wants to distinguish citizenship from allegiance. Okay. So the correct graphic, the most appropriate graphic or graphic material to be used there is a Venn diagram. It's the best choice for distinguishing between two concepts like citizenship and allegiance because it visually represents their similarities and differences. The next one, Diana wants to compare the population data of Philippines and China from 2015 to 2022. The appropriate graphic material is a line graph. To compare population data of two countries over a period of time, a line graph is ideal. It effectively shows trends and changes for multiple data sets simultaneously. Third, Marites is going to present how a bill becomes a law. The graphic material to be used is a flowchart. because the perfect tool to present a step-by-step sequence of how a bill becomes a law. So we make use of a flow chart, or also known as a process chart. Next, Jean will present the types of rights and their underlying subtypes. The most appropriate graphic material is either a classification chart or a stream or tree chart. Both are suitable for showing hierarchical relationships. Jean can use either to present the main types of rights and then branch out to the specific subtypes of rights. Number 5, how about this map? It's a population percent change. This is an example of a spatial purpose map. The map shown displays a specific theme or a data set, population percentage change over a geographic area. This type of map is also known as as we said, thematic map. The next one, Alvic is looking for a map that shows the local boundaries of each barangay in Tugigrao. The appropriate graphic material to be used here is a political map because it is designed to show governmental boundaries, which would include the local boundaries of each barangay to Tugigrao. Remember that because you're studying in the city, you have to make sure that you know the different barangays or different communities in the city, because that's one way for you to survive, no? For you to survive for you to survive living in the city for your studies. The next one, Terry will create a visual representation of the expenditure divisions from her monthly budget. The appropriate graphic material here is a circle pie graph, okay, to show the different expenditure divisions of a monthly budget. A pie chart, or what we call a circle graph, okay, is most effective. It clearly illustrates or shows how a whole amount is broken down into proportional parts. Number 8, Ariana is searching for visual representation of Jose Rizal's genealogy. So the appropriate graphic material is a stream or a tree chart because it's a family tree that you're going to create. It's the correct graphic material for representing a person's genealogy. Number 9, what kind of map is this? This is an example of a physical map because it's a map of the Philippines, and it illustrates the natural landscape features such as mountains, islands, and bodies of water in the Philippines. So you would clearly see the South China Sea, Philippine Sea, Sibuyan Sea, Bohol Sea, Sulu Sea, Moro Gulf, Celebes Sea, even the different islands like that of Luzon, Mindoro, Palawan, Panay, Cebu, Leyte, Samar, Negros, Bohol, and Mindanao. These are all islands in the country. And because it presents the physical characteristics of the Philippines, then it's called a physical map. And number 10, teacher Jason wants to create a graphic organizer about the topic food chain. The appropriate graphic material here is a flow chart or a process chart. A food chain illustrates the flow of energy in a sequence from one organism to another. Grass being eaten by the grasshopper being eaten by the frog, and the frog being eaten by the snake. This is what we mean by a flow chart or a process chart. Now, class, I hope that this recorded discussion provided you a good overview or a good lecture of the different types of conventional instructional materials that we use in the classroom. Please remember this, that these are all just tools to help you learn and grow, to help your students learn and grow. The most important thing is that you are actively engaged in your own learning. We have to remember and we have to remind our students that learning is a two-way process. Even if the teacher makes use of different or various instructional materials, if students are not helping themselves, to be actively engaged in the lesson, then learning will never take place. And we always have to remind our students that no amount of instructional materials would let them learn unless they are always curious and they would always ask good questions in class. Now, To test your understanding of this recorded discussion, I would like you to complete a drill through our learning management system. Again, thank you for listening, and I hope that you keep doing independent study and you keep asking questions in class so that you could even advance your learning in this course. Again, thank you and have a good day ahead.